They didn't ban this book. They buried it, deep beneath distractions, buried under convenience, endless scrolling, and the illusion of freedom. Because if you ever read this, really read this, your entire reality would crack. And what would pour through that crack is something they cannot control. You, the you that was never meant to stay asleep. Chapter 1. The day you were programmed, the day you opened your eyes to this world, was the day they began shaping your mind. Before you could walk, they gave you names. Good, bad, weak, strong, smart, difficult, polite. Before you could speak, they told you what to value: money, beauty, approval, being liked. And before you even knew how to think for yourself, they already filled your head with ideas that didn't belong to you. You didn't choose your beliefs. You inherited them. Like a second skin, you wore them without even realizing it. You were taught who to trust, what to fear, what success should look like. They told you, do this and you'll be happy. Be like them and you'll be accepted. Don't ask too many questions. But deep inside, you started feeling a quiet tension. Something felt off, like your soul was wearing clothes that didn't fit. Because the truth is, you were programmed. Gently, consistently, silently. Not to hurt you, but to control you. To make sure you didn't go too far, dream too big, or ask questions that made others uncomfortable. You learned to doubt yourself before you doubted the world. You learned to fit in before you learned to stand out. And slowly, you started to forget that you were born wild, born curious, born with your own fire. The worst part. You thought this version of you was normal, but it wasn't you. It was a version the world wanted you to become. All your life you were told who you are, but no one ever stopped to ask, what if none of it is true? And now you're here, holding the one thing they never wanted you to hold, the page that starts your return, because you weren't born to follow a script. You were born to rewrite it. Chapter 2. Why you forgot who you were. You didn't just wake up one day feeling lost. It happened slowly, quietly, without you noticing. Piece by piece, you forgot who you really were. Not because you were careless, but because the world trained you to forget. They gave you mirrors, but none of them showed your truth. Only what they wanted you to see. Grades, looks, popularity, productivity, achievements, not alignment. You stopped listening to your own voice because everyone else's voice was louder. Teachers, friends, family, society, everyone telling you who to be, what to chase, what matters. And so, without even realizing it, you started building a life on someone else's blueprint. A life that looked good on the outside, but felt empty on the inside. You laughed when you were supposed to. You smiled when it hurt. You stayed quiet when everything inside was screaming, not because you were weak, but because you were trained to stay small. You buried your dreams just to be accepted. You silenced your soul just to feel safe. And when the emptiness came, you blamed yourself. You thought something was wrong with you. But it wasn't your fault. You were never broken. You were buried, under noise, under pressure, under years of pretending. You didn't forget who you are. You were taught to forget, conditioned to survive in a world that feared your depth. But even in your forgetting, there was a spark, a soft ache that whispered, This isn't the full story. This isn't who I'm meant to be. That ache, it's not a flaw, it's a compass, pointing you back to the parts of you they tried to erase. And now, you're not starting over, you're returning to your truth, to your fire, to the version of you that was never meant to be silenced. This book isn't here to teach you something new. It's here to remind you of what you never really lost. Chapter 3, The Invisible Cage of Comfort. You thought you were free because you weren't in chains. You had a bed, a job, a screen to scroll. But freedom isn't about having options. It's about having yourself. And most people don't, because comfort, the kind we're sold every single day, isn't safety. It's a trap dressed in soft clothing. They told you to chase stability, to find a good life. Work 9 to 5, buy the things, fit the mold. And then, what? You get applause for blending in, rewards for obedience, likes for being like everyone else. But deep inside, your soul starts to suffocate, because it was never built to settle. It was made to expand, to stretch, to break patterns, to evolve. And comfort kills that. It numbs your hunger. It quiets your questions. It whispers, "Don't change anything. Just stay here. It's easier." And you listen because you're tired. Because you've been taught to fear pain more than regret. So you shrink yourself just a little. You tell yourself it's fine a few more times. And one day, you can't even hear your own voice anymore. That's the real prison, not made of walls, but of routines, of scrolling habits, of mindless noise, of dreams postponed just for now, until forever swallows them. You see, no one tells you that comfort has a cost, that every time you avoid discomfort, you trade a piece of your potential, that every time you say, "I'll try later," you give away a little of your power. And the worst part? You don't even know it's happening, because it all looks normal. Everyone around you is doing the same, pretending it's fine, laughing at jokes they don't feel, living lives they don't love. But you feel it. That pressure in your chest, that quiet frustration in your gut, that voice that keeps saying, "There's more than this." That voice is not trying to ruin your peace. It's trying to wake you up. Because you weren't born to coast. You weren't born to survive Monday through Friday, just to escape on the weekends. You were born to ignite, to create, to break the pattern. And that fire inside you, it won't go away. Not with success, not with sleep, not even with silence. Because it's not asking for comfort, it's asking for freedom. This book is not here to make you feel safe. It's here to remind you that safety can be a lie, that fine can be deadly, that settling is the slowest kind of soul death. You didn't come this far to fall asleep in a soft cage. You came to break it. And this chapter might be the crack. Chapter 4. Why they profit from your sleep. They don't need to chain your hands. They only need to chain your focus. Because if they can keep your mind busy, they can control your life without ever touching your body. This world doesn't want you awake. It wants you just alert enough to function, but never present enough to question. From the moment you open your eyes, they fight for your attention. The notifications, the ads, the headlines, the fear. They scream at you, not to inform you, but to distract you, to make sure your thoughts stay on everything, except what actually matters. Who am I? What do I truly want? Why am I even here? Because the moment you ask those questions, you stop being predictable. You stop being manageable. You stop being profitable. Yes, your confusion is their currency. Your anxiety keeps their industries alive. Your emptiness drives your purchases. Your fear feeds their control. They don't want you fulfilled. A fulfilled soul doesn't chase endlessly. A fulfilled soul doesn't scroll for hours looking for meaning. A fulfilled soul builds, and that's dangerous. So instead, they sell you illusions. They package happiness in bottles and subscriptions. They sell dreams you don't need, and standards that don't belong to you. And slowly, they trade your vision for a script. Work here, buy this, believe that, stay quiet, stay in line. It's not a conspiracy, it's just a system, perfectly designed to keep you asleep, while making you think you're awake. And the scariest part, most people will never notice, because they're too busy, too overwhelmed, too sedated by the next distraction, the next show, the next hit of, maybe this will make me feel something. But deep inside you, there's a part that's still untouched, still wild, still watching, the part that doesn't buy into this performance, the part that aches every time you silence your truth, just to fit in. That ache is not the problem. It's the evidence that you're still alive, still you, still capable of breaking free. But freedom doesn't come from fighting the world. It comes from reclaiming your attention, from choosing to unplug and feel. To sit with discomfort instead of numbing it. To face your own mind without running, because once you see the game, really see it, you stop playing it. You start building your own. And that's the threat. Not that you'll rebel, but that you'll wake up, fully, clearly, permanently. This book was never meant to entertain you. It was meant to interrupt the hypnosis, to remind you that while they profit from your sleep, your soul was built for clarity. And clarity is rare, because it's the one thing they can't sell you. You have to claim it. And the moment you do, you become free in a way the world cannot explain and cannot contain. Chapter 5. The War Inside Your Mind. You think you're just tired. You think you're overthinking. You think you're not motivated enough. But what you're feeling isn't laziness. It's not weakness. It's not a lack of willpower. It's a war. And the battlefield is your mind. Every single day, you're being pulled in two directions. One part of you wants to grow, to rise, to be honest, to break free. The other part? It just wants peace. It wants to stay in the comfort it knows, even if that comfort is killing you slowly. One part of you whispers, "There's more to you than this. Wake up, push, speak, change." The other part, it begs, "Don't rock the boat, don't take the risk, just survive." And this war isn't loud, it's quiet. It shows up as procrastination. It disguises itself as fatigue. It feels like scrolling for hours and then wondering where your life went. You try to fix it with motivation, with routines, with productivity hacks. But this isn't about time management. This is about identity management. Because deep down, you're not just battling distractions. You're battling who you've been and who you're meant to become. And becoming anything real requires death, not of your body, but of your false self. The version of you that was built on survival, approval, fitting in, and staying small. So when you try to change, even in the smallest way. That old version panics, not because you're failing, but because you're evolving. And evolution hurts. It's supposed to. It's not clean. It's not glamorous. It's messy. It's confusing. It's exhausting. But here's what no one tells you. That pain you feel inside your mind, that push-pull chaos, it's not a sign that you're broken. It's proof that you're waking up. You're starting to see the cracks in the script. You're questioning what you were never supposed to question. You're beginning to feel your real self. Fighting to take control, that's not weakness, that's rebirth. The system taught you to fear this feeling, to medicate it, to hide it, to pretend it's just stress. But it's not just stress. It's your spirit breaking the surface. It's the part of you that still remembers who you really are. Fighting to come alive again. You are not at war with the world. You are at war with the version of you that was created by a world that feared your truth. And every time you choose courage over comfort, stillness over distraction, truth over approval, you win a small battle in that war. And slowly, you start to reclaim your mind, your peace, your power. You stop surviving. You start living, not as who the world told you to be, but as who you were before the world touched you. This chapter is not here to tell you to fight harder. It's here to remind you that the fight itself is sacred, because it means you haven't given up. And as long as the war is still happening, that means your soul is still in the game, still reaching, still refusing to settle. And that is the most powerful proof that you were never meant to stay asleep. Chapter 6. They feared you'd read this line. This isn't just a book, and you're not just a reader. This is an awakening, and you are a threat to the system that raised you. They never needed to burn this book. They just needed to keep it hidden, not in a vault, but in plain sight, surrounded by louder distractions, movies, algorithms, endless noise. Because if you ever got quiet long enough to really read, you'd remember what? That you've always known. There's something ancient inside you, a quiet awareness that's been there since before your first heartbreak, before your first failure, before you were told to be realistic. It's the knowing that this world, this structure, this system, was never meant to define you, only to test you. And this line, right here, it's not just ink on a page. It's a signal, a code your soul has been waiting for, to wake up, to break free, to come back online. You see, they weren't scared of you growing up. They were scared of you waking up, because a person who is awake doesn't need validation, doesn't follow blindly, doesn't play by broken rules. An awake soul doesn't consume to feel full. They create, they heal, they transform rooms just by walking into them. That kind of person can't be controlled, can't be sold to, can't be silenced. So they trained you to ignore that voice inside, the one that questions, the one that feels too deeply, the one that cries without reason, because it knows there is a reason, even if you can't explain it. They told you you were too sensitive, too intense, too emotional. So you would bury your sensitivity, shrink your intensity, and numb your emotions. But those were your gifts. And this book, it's not giving them to you, it's just uncovering them. You are not broken, you are not lost, you are not behind. You were buried by fear, by programming, by expectations that never belonged to you. And now you're brushing off the dirt, not to become someone else, but to return to the one they hoped you'd forget. You want to know why this chapter matters? Because it proves that it's working, that you're working, that whatever they tried to silence has started to speak again. You wouldn't be here reading these exact words if you weren't meant to. You were meant to find this, now in this moment. Because your timing is not a mistake, it's a signal. The world is shifting, the veil is thinning, and your awareness is your weapon. This line, this very one, wasn't meant to entertain you. It was meant to disrupt you, to stop the spinning wheel of survival, and remind you that your soul came here for more, for depth, for truth, for power that comes not from control, but from clarity. They feared you'd read this line, because they knew, once you did, you'd never go back to sleep. Chapter 7. Loneliness is the cost of waking up. You thought waking up would feel like rising, like flying, like breaking free into a beautiful new world. And in some ways it does. But no one warned you about the silence that comes after, the empty room, the confused faces, the loneliness. No one told you that when you start to wake up. You might have to walk alone for a while, because the truth is, you don't lose people. You outgrow versions of yourself that needed them. You stop laughing at what you used to laugh at. You stop agreeing with things just to keep the peace. You stop showing up where your soul feels unwelcome, and suddenly, you look around, and the room that used to feel full feels strangely hollow. It's not that the world left you, it's that you walked away. Not out of pride, but out of necessity. You stopped craving noise. You stopped begging for validation. You stopped wearing masks just to be loved. And that shift, that sacred, powerful shift, will cost you something. It will cost you people who only loved your silence. People who preferred your obedience. People who called you changed when you finally started healing. But listen closely. That loneliness isn't a punishment. It's a doorway. You are not being abandoned. You are being purified, refined, realigned. You're shedding the false layers that kept you acceptable, but not authentic. And yes, it's hard. It hurts. There are nights you'll cry without knowing why. Days where you'll miss the comfort of your old prison just because it felt familiar. You'll ask yourself, why can't I just go back to who I was? But you know the answer, because that version of you was asleep. That version of you was surviving. And now you're here to live. Real growth is quiet. It happens in the background, when no one's clapping, when no one understands, when all you have is faith in something invisible, and the ache in your chest that says, keep going. This path is yours. You won't stay lonely forever, but you must pass through it, because loneliness is a filter. It clears out the noise, the fake friendships, the empty routines, the lives built on autopilot. It strips you of everything you thought you needed, so you can finally meet the version of you that needs nothing but truth. You start hearing your own voice again, louder, clearer, undeniable. And one day, you will look around and realize you are no longer lonely. You are just aligned. You'll meet people who see you without asking you to shrink. You'll build a life that matches your soul. You'll walk into rooms and feel peace instead of pressure. But you can't skip the season of solitude, because that season is sacred. It's not where you're lost. It's where you're reborn. So if you're there now, in the quiet, in the ache, in the stillness, don't run. You are not being punished. You are being prepared. Because awakening doesn't begin with crowds. It begins with you. Alone, true, unmasked, unbreakable. Chapter 8. This book is not safe. This book isn't here to comfort you. It's here to confront you, to pull back the curtains you've lived behind, to burn down the illusions you were taught to believe were real. Because comfort didn't wake you up. Pain did. Discomfort did. That restless feeling at 2 a.m. when your life looks fine on the outside, but feels empty inside. That's what brought you here. And that's why this book is dangerous. Not because of the words, but because of what they activate in you. Because once you see, you can't unsee. Once you feel the truth press against your chest, you can't go back to pretending it's not there. You might have picked this book up expecting motivation. A few good lines. Maybe something inspiring to get you through the day. But instead, this book handed you a mirror. And for the first time, you're not looking at who the world told you to be. You're looking at who you were before you were broken. Before you were trained to be polite, small, invisible. That reflection might scare you, because it's honest. It doesn't care about your resume, or your past, or your excuses. It sees past the masks, past the act. It sees the fire behind your eyes, the one you've been taught to tame your whole life. This book is not here to whisper, "It's okay, stay where you are." It's here to scream, "Wake up, you're not even close to who you could be." It doesn't want you to feel better. It wants you to remember who you were before you forgot. And that's dangerous. Because a person who remembers is unstoppable. They stop settling. They stop lying. They stop living halfway, pretending, postponing, pleasing. They stop following paths that make them sick. They stop shrinking to fit in rooms that drain their soul. They become clear. And clarity is terrifying. Not to you, but to everything that benefited from your confusion. You see, a confused person stays stuck. A confused person doesn't leave the job, doesn't end the toxic relationship, doesn't speak the truth that could change their life. But a clear person, they move mountains. That's why this book isn't safe. It doesn't teach you how to survive the world. It teaches you how to rebuild it from the inside out. And yes, it's painful. Yes, it's uncomfortable. Yes, it will break things. But hear this. Everything it breaks was never yours to begin with. It breaks illusions. It breaks programming. It breaks the shell they built around your soul, so you'd never know how powerful you really are. If this chapter makes you feel heavy, don't run. If you feel like crying, let it out. If you feel something inside you burning, don't smother it. That's not weakness. That's truth waking up. This is not the end of your breakdown. This is the beginning of your breakthrough. So close this chapter if you must. But just know, you'll never be the same again. Because the moment you read these words, you passed a point of no return. You're no longer safe. You're awake. And that changes everything. Chapter 9. You were born to break patterns. You didn't come here to repeat. You didn't come here to blend in. You didn't come here to copy and paste a life that never felt like yours. You were born to break what others were too afraid to question. To destroy the cycle that kept your family in silence. to unlearn everything that kept your ancestors small, to be the interruption, the storm, the sacred disruption in a system built on fear. You look around, and maybe everyone seems fine, doing what they're told, living by the book, following the script, smiling at lives that don't make them feel alive. And a part of you wonders, why can't I just be like them? Why does my soul ache when I try to settle? Why do I feel like something is missing, even when everything looks okay? The answer is simple, because you're not them. You were wired differently, not better, not higher, but deeper. You feel things others ignore. You hear the silence in conversations that sound loud. You sense truth in places no one else is even looking. And that sensitivity, that restlessness, that pull to create, to change, to walk away, to rise. It's not a flaw, it's a mission. It's the reason you're here, to stop the generational loop of pretending, to stop the echo of fear passed down like a family heirloom, to say, no more, it ends with me. But breaking patterns is not glamorous. It's lonely. It's painful. You'll cry without knowing why. You'll feel guilty for wanting more. You'll feel torn between who you've been trained to be and who you were born to become. Because growth requires loss. You will lose people who only knew the old you. You will lose roles that felt safe. You will lose excuses that once protected you. And in that space of loss, you will finally meet truth. You'll realize that peace doesn't come from keeping everything the same. It comes from choosing to be real, even if it makes others uncomfortable. You'll learn that family doesn't always mean alignment. That love sometimes means letting go. That loyalty to your truth is more sacred than loyalty to your history. Because you are not here to carry what broke them. You are here to heal it. You were born with fire in your soul and clarity in your pain. The same patterns that destroyed them were sent to you for redemption. And it doesn't matter where you started. It doesn't matter who doubted you. It doesn't matter how far you strayed. You woke up, and that alone makes you the cycle breaker. You are the first whisper of something new. You are the dream your ancestors never got to live. You are the one who walks away from the fire, not to escape, but to return with water. So don't hate the pain, don't curse the calling, don't wish you were normal. Because you weren't born to fit in. You were born to transform. You were born to question, to stretch, to rip the mask off this tired performance and remind the world what truth looks like. It will hurt. You'll want to quit. But remember this, every time you feel the weight of this path, you are not being crushed. You are being carved into something deeper, stronger, unbreakable. This is why they couldn't program you like everyone else. Why you never quite fit. Why you've always carried this quiet sense of more. Because you were born not just to wake up, but to wake others up. And that begins with your decision. Will you keep performing the life they gave you? Or will you become the one you were born to be? The world doesn't need more copies. It needs you, raw, real, unrepeatable. You were born to break patterns and rebuild truth. Chapter 10. You were never lost, you were hidden. There were seasons where you felt invisible, where no one called. No doors opened, where your efforts went unnoticed, and your voice felt like it was echoing into nothing. You looked around, and it seemed like everyone else was getting ahead. They were shining, they were seen. And you were just waiting. And you began to believe the lie. Maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I'm not chosen. Maybe I missed my moment. But you didn't miss anything. Because you were never forgotten. You were hidden, not rejected, not cast aside, but protected by something higher, something wiser. From a world that wasn't ready for your light. You see, there are some people who get rushed into visibility. Their name is known before their soul is ready, and the spotlight that they once craved burns them alive. But you were given silence not because you had nothing to say, but because your voice was still being sharpened. You were given stillness, not because you had no purpose, but because your roots were still deepening. You were given delay, not as a punishment, but as a divine recalibration, a cosmic timing adjustment, a preparation season so deep you didn't even know you were being prepared. You weren't late. You were just being crafted. That's why every room you were kept out of wasn't a denial. It was a delay of exposure. Because if you were seen too soon, you would have performed, not embodied. You would have mimicked others, not embodied your truth. You had to sit in the dark so your own voice could become louder than the world's noise. You had to lose the things you thought defined you, so you could finally discover the identity that no one could take away. The waiting didn't weaken you. It humbled you. It refined you. It stripped away every false layer until what remained was unshakable. And when it's time, really time, you won't need to beg to be seen. You won't need to knock on closed doors. Because when the divine is ready to reveal what's been hidden, nothing can stop it. Not fear, not other people, not even you. And when you do rise, you'll carry something rare, depth. Because you didn't just arrive. You evolved. You were never lost. You were never off track. You were just in the shadows, learning, healing, sharpening, shedding. They looked at you and said, "Where did you go?" But the truth is, you were right where you needed to be, becoming someone they wouldn't even recognize. You see, growth doesn't always look like movement. Sometimes it looks like stillness, like disappearing, like silence so deep, even you forget your own sound. But that silence is sacred, because what's born in silence cannot be shaken by noise. So if you're still in that season, if you're still hidden, don't panic, don't rush. You are not behind. You are being divinely protected from a version of success that would have destroyed you. And when the time is right, you won't have to force your moment. Your moment will find you. Because what's real, what's meant, doesn't need chasing. It just needs becoming. Chapter 11. You're not meant to wake up alone. There comes a point in the journey where you feel like no one understands you, like you're speaking a language only your soul knows. You look around, and suddenly, the people you used to connect with now feel distant, like they're living in a world you've outgrown. You wonder, am I crazy for feeling this way? Why can't I just enjoy what everyone else enjoys? Why does all of this feel so fake? This is the loneliness that comes with awakening. Because the moment you start asking real questions, you start living a life fewer people understand. You start noticing things others ignore. You feel emotions more deeply. You hear silence more loudly. You crave truth more than comfort. And while it may feel like a curse, it's not. It's a sacred transition, a spiritual recalibration, a phase where everything shallow falls away, so something deeper can take its place. But here's the truth they don't tell you. You were never meant to wake up just for yourself. Your awakening was never a selfish act. It was a signal dash, a divine ripple sent through your bloodline, through your generation, through time itself. You were chosen to see what others couldn't, not to feel better than them, but to lead them, not by force, not by preaching, but by becoming. You wake up first, so you can hold the light for the ones who are still asleep, the ones who are still trapped in survival, the ones still addicted to noise, to drama, to distractions. You're not supposed to pull them out. You're just supposed to be the evidence. That freedom is possible, because when you start to change, they'll feel it, even if they don't understand it. Your presence will start to do something. Without words, without effort, your energy will become truth that can't be ignored. And yes, some will walk away. Some will mock you. Some will say, "You've changed." And you have. Because you had to. Because the cost of staying the same was killing you. But don't forget, there are others. Others who are on the same road. You just haven't met them yet. They're also sitting alone at 3 a.m., also questioning everything, also feeling like outsiders in a world full of masks. And one day, you'll find each other, or maybe they'll find you, drawn not by words, but by resonance. And in that moment, you'll realize you were never truly alone. You were just early, because someone has to go first. Someone has to be the one who breaks the pattern, who walks away from the noise, who chooses truth, even if it means standing in silence for a while. You are not alone. You are just ahead, and those who are meant to walk with you, they are being prepared the same way you were. Their pain is waking them up. Their silence is pulling them inward. Their breakdown is becoming their breakthrough. You'll recognize them when you see them, not by appearance, but by energy. The calm in their eyes, the depth in their silence, the light they don't even know they're carrying. Your tribe isn't made of the loudest voices. It's made of the most authentic souls. And they're coming. So if you're walking alone right now, don't dim your light to be understood. Don't pretend just to feel included. Don't go back to sleep just to feel surrounded. Because every time you choose truth over comfort, you're becoming the person someone else is silently praying to meet. You're not alone in your awakening. You're just becoming the one who goes first, so others can remember how to follow. Chapter 12. The system wasn't built to survive you. You were never the problem. The system was, but the system needed you to believe that something was wrong with you. So you'd never question it. From the beginning, you were told to stay in line, to be reasonable, to be polite, to follow the script. They gave you dreams with fine print and goals that made you exhausted instead of alive. You did everything they said. You followed the rules. You performed. You adapted. And yet, it still felt like something was missing, because there was. Your soul, your fire, your truth. You see, the world wasn't designed for someone like you. Someone who sees too clearly, feels too deeply, asks too many questions. The system wasn't made to nurture people like you. It was made to use them, to harvest your energy, to steal your time, to dull your voice, to keep you scrolling, comparing, performing, apologizing. But something inside you refused to die. Maybe it was a whisper, a breakdown, a dream you couldn't ignore, a pain that kept coming back until you finally listened. That was your rebellion, your resistance, your return. You were never meant to survive the system. You were meant to outgrow it, to wake up inside of it. and realize that freedom isn't something you're given. It's something you reclaim. They told you to find yourself. But how can you find what was never lost? You were always here, waiting, buried under expectations, hidden behind titles, trapped in the version of you that made everyone else comfortable. But here's the truth. You never belonged to this version of the world. You belong to what comes after. That's why you felt like a misfit. That's why you never fit in. Because you weren't made to. You weren't made to survive a broken world. You were made to remake it. With your words, with your presence, with your clarity, with your refusal to be anything less than real. And yes, the path is harder when you walk it awake. You feel more, you lose more, you see through things you wish you didn't, but you gain something that can't be measured. Power, not the kind they sell in boardrooms and screens, the kind that radiates from someone who knows who they are and cannot be moved. That kind of person can't be bought, can't be silenced, can't be programmed, because they've remembered the one thing that breaks every system, their own truth. So here you are, at the end of a book they hoped you'd never finish. Not because they feared the words, but because they feared what these words would awaken in you. Now you see clearly. Now you feel deeply. Now you remember who you are. And the system, it's trembling, because you're not confused anymore. You're not numb. You're not lost. You are awake. And an awakened soul is the most unstoppable force on earth. This book didn't give you anything. It only reminded you of what you always had, the ability to burn down what's false and build what's real, the ability to walk alone and still shine, to be misunderstood and still speak truth, to be buried and still rise. So now what? Now you live awake, not half alive, not half hiding, but fully present, fully lit, fully you, because the system wasn't built to survive someone like you. And that's exactly why it's time for you to lead. You are the one they tried to distract, the one they tried to bury, the one they tried to silence. But you made it here. You finished the book. You remembered your name, and now they can't stop you. Chapter 13, The Illusion of Control, was their greatest weapon. They told you that control is power. Plan every step. Master every detail. Be ahead of the game. Be in charge of your life. But what they didn't tell you was that the need to control everything isn't power. It's fear in disguise. The more you try to control the world, the more you disconnect from the truth inside you. Because control doesn't bring peace, it brings pressure, it brings perfectionism, it brings anxiety disguised as responsibility. You obsess over outcomes, over timing, over people's reactions. You replay moments over and over, trying to change what's already gone, trying to predict what hasn't even come. And somewhere along the way, you start to mistake survival for success. You try to control how people see you. So you silence your truth. You try to control your future. So you stop taking real risks. You try to control your healing. So you fake being fine. And it works for a while, until your body breaks, until your heart aches, until your spirit whispers, "This isn't living, this is managing." But here's the hidden truth. The moment you surrender what you think you're supposed to control is the moment you remember your real power. Real power is not in clenching your fists tighter. It's in letting go of what was never yours to hold. You were never meant to control other people's opinions. You were never meant to control the exact timing of your breakthrough. You were never meant to force your way through life. You were meant to flow, to align, to listen, to trust what your inner voice knows, even when your ego screams in panic. That voice, quiet, steady, ancient, is not random. It's sacred. It is the part of you untouched by the world, the part of you that remembers what your mind forgot. But it only speaks when you stop trying to control everything. This is why they gave you the illusion of control. Because as long as you're busy trying to manage every detail, you'll never hear the whisper that could set you free. They made you fear surrender. But surrender is not weakness. Surrender is sacred strategy. It's not giving up. It's giving over to something deeper than your doubt. It's the highest act of trust, the deepest kind of strength. You surrender, not because you're quitting, but because you finally understand. You were never meant to carry all of it. You let go, so something real can rise in its place. That's not failure. That's awakening. Chapter 14. Your rock bottom was the doorway to everything. No one plans to fall. No one chooses to break. But somehow, you did. You fell hard into that place you swore you'd never go, into a version of life that didn't look like strength, didn't feel like hope, didn't match the image you tried so hard to hold together. You know the place. The silence at 3 a.m. when you stopped trying to fix it. The moment when the pain got so loud that even your distractions couldn't mute it anymore. The day you realized you were surrounded by people, but still felt invisible. And in that pit, that deep, hollow, terrifying space, you asked the question most people are too afraid to say out loud: what's the point of any of this? And right there was the beginning. Because your rock bottom wasn't a punishment, it was a turning point. It was the first honest conversation between your soul and your survival. You thought it was the end, but it was the first time you stopped pretending. The first time you said, "I'm not okay," and actually meant it. You weren't failing. You were finally feeling. And maybe it was messy. Maybe you broke things. Maybe you lost people. Maybe you even lost parts of yourself that you thought were permanent. But what you didn't lose was the fire, the whisper, the sacred part of you that said, "Don't quit. This isn't where it ends." Because real healing doesn't start when things are beautiful. It starts when things fall apart. Not because falling apart is noble, but because when everything breaks, you finally have room to rebuild from truth. No more pretending, no more masks, no more performing strength while bleeding inside. Rock bottom wasn't the moment you lost your power. It was the moment you met it. Because that pain, that wasn't weakness. That was everything false inside you dying. So something real could be born. No therapist, no book, no motivational quote could teach you what the fire of rock bottom taught you. It taught you that your worth isn't tied to your success, that real strength is surrendering to the fall and still choosing to rise. It taught you how to pray again. Not with fancy words, but with broken sobs and shaky hands. It taught you that when the world goes silent, God speaks louder. It taught you how to walk with scars, how to breathe through uncertainty, how to find peace in pieces. And most of all, it taught you that even at your worst, you were still chosen, still guided, still loved. You see, pain doesn't come to destroy. It comes to reveal, to cleanse, to awaken the parts of you that comfort kept asleep. And you survived what you thought would kill you. not just survived, you transformed. So stop hiding your scars. They are sacred. They are proof. Proof that rock bottom wasn't a grave. It was a birthplace. The place where your old self died and your true self began. Chapter 15. You are not who they told you to be. Look at your life. Look at the person you became just to survive it. The way you quieted your voice. The way you laughed at things that hurt. The way you worked twice as hard to feel half as worthy. The way you settled for connections that barely touched your soul, just so you wouldn't feel alone. That version of you, it wasn't the real you. It was the survival you, the edited you, the version of you created by trauma, pressure, and the unspoken fear that if you ever showed your full self, you'd be rejected. So you became careful. You watched your words. You managed your emotions. You shrank your dreams so they wouldn't look too much. You wore masks so well. You started to believe they were your face. But deep inside, something sacred never forgot. There's a version of you, raw, radiant, untamed, who's still alive under the surface. That version never needed validation. It never played small to be accepted. It never waited to be chosen, because it knew it was already enough. That version didn't just dream. It remembered. But the world didn't reward that version. The world told you to be realistic, to be humble, to be normal. So you folded your wings. You covered your light. You wore the names they gave you instead of the truth that lived inside you. But here's what they never told you. You're allowed to return. You're allowed to unlearn the lies. You're allowed to shed the false self you built just to feel safe. You're allowed to stop performing strength and finally feel whole. You are not your shame. You are not your mistakes. You are not the person you became to survive the storm. You are the one who walked through it and came out burning with truth. You are the one who stood in silence, faced the mirror and whispered, "There's more to me than this." And that whisper, that was your soul, still alive, still watching, still waiting. You don't need permission to be real again. You just need to remember who you were before the world told you to forget. Who were you before they shamed your emotions, before they criticized your voice, before they made you believe you had to earn your worth? Because that's the real you, and they tried to erase it. But here you are, standing at the edge of everything you buried, and now it's your choice. Do you keep living the performance? Or do you return to the origin, the you that doesn't apologize for feeling deeply, the you that doesn't edit your truth to make others comfortable, the you that was born to disrupt, to heal, to shine? You've been surviving for so long that you forgot what it feels like to just be. But you're allowed to come home. You're allowed to be wild and soft, fierce and gentle. You're allowed to be messy and sacred at the same time. You were never meant to be one thing. You were meant to be whole. And that wholeness, it's not waiting at the finish line. It's buried under all the things you were told not to be. So shed the shame. Unlearn the fear. Return, not as a better version, but as a truer one. You are not who they told you to be. You never were, and now you don't have to pretend anymore. Chapter 16. You woke up for a reason. Don't go back to sleep. This is it, the end of the book. But not the end of the journey, because something sacred happened here. Quietly, but permanently. Something deep inside you has changed. You may not be able to explain it. You may not have the words for it, but you feel it in your breath, in your chest, in that space behind your eyes that's still holding the truth you were too afraid to look at. Until now, let's be honest, you didn't come here for entertainment. You didn't listen to this because life was perfect. You came because you were tired. Tired of pretending. Tired of carrying a version of yourself that didn't match your soul. Tired of the noise, the expectations, the pressure to perform. And somewhere along the way, between the lines, the silence, the tears, the fire, you remembered this life is not a stage. It's a classroom. It's a battlefield. It's a sanctuary. It's a mirror. You remembered that your pain wasn't random, that your loneliness had a purpose, that your sensitivity wasn't weakness. It was antenna, a way of receiving signals others couldn't hear. You remembered that the world was never supposed to define you, that your identity was never meant to be built by opinions, that your soul is older than your name, and most of all, you remembered that you are not here by accident, because if you were just meant to go through the motions, you wouldn't be this awake. You wouldn't be burning with questions. You wouldn't be standing at the edge of yourself, feeling that quiet voice say, "Don't go back. Don't go back to numbing. Don't go back to pretending. Don't go back to apologizing for your existence. Don't go back to shrinking so other people can feel comfortable. You are not the same person who started this journey. And you don't need to fix yourself. You don't need to earn your right to be here. You don't need to wait until everything makes sense. You just need to stay awake. Because now, you've seen the illusion. You've walked through the fire. You've sat in the silence. You've peeled off the layers they wrapped around you to keep you manageable. And what's left is real, raw, unfiltered, undeniable. You. This is not the end. This is the doorway. And the only thing you have to do now is keep choosing truth when it would be easier to choose comfort. Keep walking when it would be easier to collapse. Keep speaking when it would be easier to stay silent. Keep shining when it would be easier to fade. Because someone out there is still asleep, still in pain, still wondering if they're the only one who feels this lost. And they're going to meet you. They're going to feel you. Your energy, your presence, your clarity. And without even knowing why, they'll start to wake up too. So protect your fire, live awake, speak from the soul, and never again let the world convince you that your light is too much. They hid this book so you'd never wake up. But you did. And now, you're not just awake, you're alive. And that is unstoppable. Close your eyes, not to sleep, but to see. Feel this moment, not just with your mind, but with your soul. Because after everything you've read, everything you've faced, everything you've remembered, there's one truth that can no longer be denied. You're not the same. This wasn't just a book. It was a mirror, a fire, a trigger, a quiet revolution inside your chest. You're not confused anymore. You're clear. You're not broken. You're becoming. And now that you're awake, there's only one question left. What will you do with this clarity? Will you go back to sleep, just to be accepted, just to be comfortable, just to fit back into a life you've already outgrown? Or will you rise, fully, unapologetically, relentlessly, into the person you were born to be? Because now, you don't need another permission slip. You don't need another affirmation. You don't need another voice telling you who you are. You know, And when you know, you don't chase, you don't beg, you become. So walk forward now, not as the version they tolerated, but as the truth they never saw coming. You're not just someone who read a book. You're someone who woke up, and nothing is more dangerous to a world built on lies than a soul who sees through the illusion and still chooses to shine. They tried to keep this from you. They hoped you wouldn't finish. They prayed you'd stay distracted. But here you are, still standing, still burning, still you. And now that you're awake, the world has no idea what's coming